What if you could change the course of your life, just by adjusting one thing in your daily routine? Lisa sat at the edge of her bed, staring at the small, white pill bottle in her hands. The label, marked in bold letters with the names of medications she took for high blood pressure, cholesterol, and joint pain, seemed to mock her. Each pill she swallowed felt like a reminder that, despite her best efforts, her health was slipping away. She had always been a fighter, strong, independent, and full of life, but the years had taken their toll. Now, in her early 60s, she was finding it harder and harder to keep up. The energy she once had to power through her day was slowly fading. Simple tasks, like climbing the stairs or carrying groceries, had become major hurdles. It wasn't just her body that was failing her. It was her mind, too. Fatigue clouded her thoughts, and a lingering sadness hovered over her, reminding her of the loss of her husband, Tom, who had passed away 3 years ago. Since his death, Lisa had struggled to find a new sense of purpose. That morning, as she sat in the quiet stillness of her room, her thoughts drifted to the future. What's next, she wondered. Would she continue down this path of feeling worn out and helpless? Would the years ahead look more and more like the last few, filled with prescriptions, doctor visits, and constant worry? Then, the unexpected happened. Her phone buzzed, breaking her thoughts. It was a message from her son, David. "Hey Mom, I've been looking into some health tips for you. Maybe it's time we talk about a different approach. We can talk about it tonight." Lisa frowned, feeling a mix of irritation and curiosity. David was always trying to get her to take better care of herself. She appreciated his concern, but there was only so much she could handle. Yet, as much as she resisted, something in his message caught her attention. What was this different approach he was referring to? What if it was exactly what she needed? What if a simple change could turn everything around? Lisa shook her head, chuckling to herself. She had heard so many health fads over the years, the latest diet trend, a miracle supplement for aging, the secret to feeling younger. But none of them had worked. And yet, there was a small spark of hope inside her that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. She decided to meet David for dinner later. He always had this way of making things seem possible, even when life felt impossibly hard. Maybe it was time to listen. As Lisa drove to meet David, the thought of her health and the possibility of change gnawed at her. Could something as simple as adjusting her diet really make a difference? Could the foods she ate every day be contributing to her fatigue, her aches, and pains? For years, she had believed that she was eating a balanced diet, one that would help her age gracefully. But what if she was wrong? The car ride felt longer than usual. The streets passed by, but Lisa's mind was racing with questions. She thought about her regular meals, her large salads with tomatoes, her mashed potatoes, and her daily cup of coffee. Was it all part of the problem? Could these foods be holding her back from living a healthier life? When she arrived at the restaurant, David was already seated at a corner table, his laptop open in front of him. He looked up as she walked in and smiled warmly. "Mom, I'm glad you could make it." Lisa smiled back, taking a seat. "I have to admit, you've got me curious now. What's this new approach you've been researching?" David leaned forward, closing his laptop. "Well, Mom, you know how we've talked about your health before, right? The joint pain, the fatigue, the blood pressure issues. I've been doing some research, and there's something I think we should really consider, something that could make a huge difference." Lisa's heart skipped a beat. Was he talking about another supplement, another fad diet? David continued, sensing her skepticism. "It's about food. Specifically, the vegetables we eat. I've been reading about which ones could be making things worse, even though we think they're healthy." Lisa blinked, taken aback. "Vegetables? But, vegetables are good for you, aren't they? I mean, I eat a lot of them. Tomatoes, spinach, carrots." David nodded, but his expression was serious. Some vegetables, like tomatoes and potatoes, can actually trigger inflammation in your joints. The same goes for spinach and other leafy greens. I know it sounds strange, but they could be making your symptoms worse. Lisa frowned. But I've always been told vegetables are the key to staying healthy. They're supposed to help with everything from digestion to heart health. David smiled. They are, but not all vegetables are created equal for seniors. Some can cause more harm than good. What if the foods you're eating are actually holding you back from feeling better? Lisa's mind raced. Could it be true? Could the vegetables she had been eating all these years be the very reason she felt so miserable? The thought felt almost too simple to be real, yet it sparked something in her, a tiny glimmer of hope. Are you saying that if I change what I eat, I could actually start feeling better? Lisa asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. David nodded. It's not just about what you cut out, Mom. It's about what you replace those foods with. There are vegetables that can actually help reduce inflammation and improve your energy. We can focus on those, and I promise you'll start seeing a difference. Lisa felt a mixture of skepticism and hope. Could she really change her life just by changing what she ate? The more she thought about it, the more she realized that this might be the one thing she hadn't tried yet. She had tried medications, exercise, and even therapy for the emotional pain of losing Tom. But had she truly given her diet a fair chance? I'm willing to try, Lisa said, her voice steady despite the uncertainty. But I need to know what to do. David smiled and pulled out a notebook. We'll start simple. Let's talk about the vegetables you should avoid, and the ones you should focus on. Lisa felt a spark of hope begin to grow. Maybe, just maybe, this would be the change she had been waiting for. As they began discussing the details of Lisa's new diet plan, she couldn't help but wonder, could something as simple as vegetables really be the key to her health? Would this decision be the turning point she had been looking for? The answers weren't clear yet, but for the first time in a long time, Lisa felt like she was standing at the beginning of something important. The rest of the evening passed quickly as they talked, laughed, and planned the next steps together. Lisa wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was certain, she was ready to take control of her health. And she was determined to do whatever it took to feel better, starting with her diet. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Lisa had always been a woman of strength and independence. Growing up in a bustling household with 2 siblings, she had learned early on to hold her own. She was the first in her family to graduate from college, the first to land a steady job in a competitive field, and the first to raise a family of her own. Throughout her life, she had prided herself on her ability to juggle everything: work, family, friendships, and health. But after she lost Tom, her world had started to unravel. Tom was her rock, the love of her life. They had been together for over 30 years, navigating the ups and downs of life hand in hand. They had built a life filled with love, laughter, and shared experiences. But when Tom passed away from a sudden heart attack 3 years ago, Lisa felt like a part of her had died with him. The days that followed his passing were a blur. At first, she was surrounded by people, family, friends, and neighbors who offered condolences, checked in on her, and made sure she wasn't alone. But as the months dragged on, the visits became less frequent. Her friends and family had their own lives to live, and Lisa was left to confront her grief in solitude. She spent most of her time in the house they had once shared, wandering through rooms that still smelled like Tom's cologne. Her old hobbies, like gardening and painting, lost their appeal. It wasn't that she didn't want to try. It was just that the energy, the drive, that had once been so vibrant in her was gone. Lisa had lost her sense of purpose. As the months turned into years, Lisa noticed something else: her body was changing. The physical activity that had once come so easily, long walks through the park, weekend hikes with Tom, had gradually faded away. She didn't feel like going out anymore, and the weight she had put on after Tom's passing didn't help. The fatigue was the worst. Lisa found herself waking up tired, no matter how much sleep she got. The mornings felt like a struggle, and by the afternoon, she could barely keep her eyes open. Simple tasks, like getting dressed or making lunch, felt like monumental challenges. Her energy levels were at an all-time low, and the joy she once felt from life seemed to be slipping through her fingers. Her joints ached, too. What had once been a mild stiffness in the mornings was now a constant, throbbing pain that made it difficult to move. Climbing the stairs felt like climbing a mountain, and every time she stood up, she could feel her knees groaning in protest. The aches had become a part of her daily routine. It was during a visit to her doctor a year ago that she finally started to understand the extent of her physical decline. Her blood pressure was high, her cholesterol was elevated, and her weight had crept up significantly. The doctor had suggested a series of lifestyle changes, exercise, a better diet, and more sleep. But Lisa didn't know where to start. Her habits had been ingrained over the years, and making a change felt overwhelming. Her son, David, had always been the kind of person who pushed her to do better. From the time he was a child, he had encouraged her to try new things, whether it was picking up a new hobby or adopting healthier habits. As an adult, David's concern for his mother's health had only grown. He had a family of his own, and the idea of his mom not being around for long worried him. Every time he visited, he would encourage her to eat better, go for a walk, and take care of herself. But Lisa had always pushed him away, telling him she was fine. After all, she wasn't one of those people who needed help, right? But in the quiet moments when she was alone, Lisa couldn't deny the truth: she wasn't fine. The realization hit her harder than any medical diagnosis ever could. She had let herself go. Her weight, her health, her emotions. They were all a reflection of her grief and her inability to move forward after Tom's death. She had stopped living in the present, and it was taking a toll on her body and mind. Despite her reluctance to admit it, Lisa knew something had to change. She couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay. For the first time in years, she began to wonder if maybe David was right, that it was time for her to focus on herself again. To take control of her health, to stop mourning the past, and to start making the most of the time she had left. It wasn't just about losing weight or feeling better, it was about finding herself again. In the weeks that followed, Lisa began to make small changes. She took short walks around the neighborhood, slowly building up her stamina. She started cooking for herself again, focusing on healthier meals and cutting back on processed foods. But the real breakthrough came when she started thinking about her diet more seriously. She began reading up on food, health, and aging. And that's when the idea of changing her relationship with food took root. She started thinking back to the meals she and Tom had enjoyed together, the hearty stews, the pasta, the potatoes. They were comforting meals, but now they seemed to be the very foods that were weighing her down, both physically and emotionally. Could it be that the foods she thought were helping her maintain her health were actually doing the opposite? Could something as simple as her diet be the key to regaining the energy and vitality she so desperately missed? But that's when she hit a wall. She didn't know where to start. There was so much conflicting information out there. Some people said tomatoes were bad, others swore by them. Some recommended cutting out potatoes completely, while others claimed they were fine in moderation. Lisa didn't know who to trust. The idea of making drastic changes to her diet seemed overwhelming. Yet, she knew one thing for sure: if she was ever going to reclaim her health and her life, she had to start somewhere. And that's when David reached out to her, suggesting they talk about her diet. As she sat across from her son at the restaurant, her heart was full of mixed emotions. Skepticism, hope, uncertainty. Could something as simple as changing what she ate really make a difference? And if so, what foods should she avoid, and which ones should she embrace? Lisa was about to embark on a journey that would challenge everything she thought she knew about aging, food, and health. A journey that would push her to reconsider the habits and beliefs she had held for years. But in that moment, she was ready. It was time to take control of her health and her future. It was time to find out whether the food she ate could truly make a difference in how she felt, how she lived, and how she aged. David's words echoed in her mind as she prepared to take the next step. What if you could change the course of your life, just by adjusting one thing in your daily routine? Lisa was about to find out. Lisa sat at the kitchen table, staring at the list David had helped her create. It was a simple guide: foods to avoid, and foods to eat. Her eyes scanned the list, and a heavy sigh escaped her lips. The list seemed innocent enough: tomatoes, potatoes, spinach, and other vegetables that had always been staples in her diet. But seeing them in black and white, written down so plainly, made the challenge ahead feel all too real. She glanced at the clock. It was time for lunch, and she had a routine. Every day, without fail, she made a big salad, one of those hearty, filling meals that felt healthy, especially with tomatoes and spinach. But today, that meal didn't seem like the best choice. She would need to make adjustments. As her eyes moved over the list, a knot formed in her stomach. Tomatoes, she muttered to herself. Spinach. Potatoes. These were the foods I thought I was supposed to be eating. She shook her head in disbelief. She had trusted these foods for so long, convinced they were good for her. She had never once questioned them. But now, with David's research in front of her, it all felt so different. It wasn't just the vegetables. It was the entire way she had been living. The routines, the habits, the comfort foods, all of it seemed like a crutch she had relied on for far too long. And now that she was being asked to change it all, the idea of it felt overwhelming. Could she really give up these familiar foods? Could she let go of the routines that had kept her grounded for so many years? She ran her fingers through her hair, a sense of frustration building inside her. Why did it have to be so hard? All she wanted was to feel better, to regain some sense of control over her life. But the more she looked at the list, the more she realized that change wasn't going to come easily. That evening, Lisa couldn't help but feel a little defeated. She had tried her best to stick to the new eating plan. She made a simple stir-fry with lean chicken and some of the vegetables David had recommended: broccoli, carrots, zucchini. But as she took her first bite, the taste felt foreign. She missed the comfort of her old meals, the ones that felt familiar, the ones she had prepared countless times before. David had assured her that the transition wouldn't be easy, and that she might even feel a little lost in the beginning. Give it time, he had said. Your body is used to certain things, but with time, it will adapt. You'll feel better, I promise. But tonight, Lisa wasn't so sure. The stir-fry was healthy, yes, but it lacked the heartiness she craved. She longed for the creamy mashed potatoes, the rich, flavorful stews that used to bring so much comfort. The food on her plate just didn't feel satisfying in the same way. As she sat there, trying to convince herself that she could get used to this new way of eating, a wave of frustration washed over her. She wasn't just battling her cravings, she was battling years of habits, of routines that had shaped her identity. How could she possibly let go of everything she knew? A few days passed, and the struggle continued. Lisa found herself standing in front of the refrigerator, opening and closing it repeatedly, unsure of what to prepare for dinner. The familiar food she had always relied on seemed to be calling her name. The leftover mashed potatoes from the night before, the bag of frozen corn, the jar of tomato sauce she had been meaning to use, each one felt like a comforting reminder of her past. But she couldn't give in. She had promised herself that she was going to make this change, that she was going to take her health seriously. So, she reached for the zucchini and bell peppers, the broccoli and sweet potatoes. She felt a pang of disappointment, but she knew it was time to stick with it. Still, as she sat down to eat the grilled vegetables, a feeling of emptiness lingered. The food was fine, healthy even, but it didn't feel like a meal she could love. She had spent so many years finding joy in her food, and now, with this new approach, it felt like a chore. The next morning, Lisa met up with David at her favorite coffee shop. As she sipped her black coffee, another change she had made, cutting out her usual sugar and cream, she couldn't help but express her frustration. "I don't know, David," she said, stirring her coffee absently. "I've been trying. I really have. But it's hard. The food doesn't taste the same. It doesn't fill me up like it used to. And I keep thinking about the foods I used to love, the mashed potatoes, the pasta, the tomato sauce." David nodded, his expression soft with understanding. "I know it's tough, Mom. It's not supposed to be easy. You're trying to change something that's been a part of you for so long. But remember, this isn't about giving up the foods you love forever. It's about finding balance. These foods you're eating now will help you feel better. Your body needs to heal." Lisa stared into her coffee cup, thinking about his words. He was right, of course. She had to keep reminding herself why she was doing this. It wasn't just about avoiding certain vegetables, it was about creating a lifestyle that would allow her to feel better, to feel more alive. "I just want to feel better, David," she said quietly. "I'm tired of feeling tired. I want to be able to walk without pain, to enjoy life again." David's eyes softened. "I know, Mom. And I believe you can do it. But it's going to take time. This is just the beginning. You're not going to see results overnight, but every small change you make is a step forward. You've done hard things before, and this is no different." Lisa nodded, taking in his words. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that this new way of eating could help her feel like herself again. But deep down, the battle was just beginning. It wasn't just about changing what was on her plate, it was about changing a way of life that had been so familiar to her for so long. That afternoon, Lisa went for a walk around the neighborhood. It was something she had started doing more often in recent weeks, trying to build up her strength and endurance. As she walked, the sun warmed her face, and a slight breeze ruffled her hair. For a moment, she felt a sense of peace. Maybe this change wasn't going to be easy, but it was possible. She had taken the first step, and now, it was time to take the next. She had made it through this far, and she wasn't going to give up now. She thought about the advice David had given her, and for the first time in days, she felt a little spark of hope. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was worth it. If she could stick with this new diet, if she could embrace these changes, maybe she could regain the energy, the health, and the life she had been missing. As the walk ended, Lisa made a promise to herself. She would take this one step at a time. She wasn't alone in this journey. And with each new choice, each new vegetable, she was one step closer to the woman she used to be, and the woman she could still become. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Lisa felt like she was on the right path. What if she could find a way to love the food that could heal her? What if this journey, as difficult as it seemed, was the key to a healthier, more vibrant life? Lisa didn't have all the answers yet, but she knew one thing: she wasn't giving up. Lisa's journey into healthy aging had officially begun, but she was beginning to realize just how challenging it would be. There was no magic pill, no quick fix. The changes she had committed to were hard, and the temptation to slip back into old habits was constant. Yet, every day, Lisa told herself that this time, she was going to follow through. She had no choice but to push forward. She had made a promise to herself, and now she had to keep it. That morning, she woke up earlier than usual. The sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, casting a golden glow on the counters. It was a beautiful day, and there was a strange sense of calm in the air, almost like the universe was telling her that today was the day to take a step forward. As she sat down at the table, the familiar list of foods to avoid and eat was spread out in front of her. Today's challenge would be to cook a new recipe, one that incorporated the healthy vegetables that David had recommended. She had been practicing cooking with sweet potatoes, broccoli, and zucchini, but today, she was going to tackle something more complex: a quinoa and vegetable stir-fry with a homemade avocado dressing. At first, she felt unsure. Could she really do this? Would it taste as good as the comfort food she had grown so accustomed to? Her hand hovered over the sweet potatoes as she diced them into cubes, trying to ignore the lingering desire for mashed potatoes or roasted carrots with butter. The craving was intense, like an old friend calling her back into a life she thought she had moved on from. But she pushed those thoughts aside. She chopped the vegetables, the knife slicing through the colorful peppers and zucchini. There was something almost meditative about the process. As the smell of the cooking vegetables filled the kitchen, Lisa realized that this might not be so bad after all. The dish wasn't going to replace her old favorites, but it could become something new, a new favorite, perhaps. She tossed the quinoa in with the vegetables, and soon, the entire room smelled vibrant and fresh. When it was done, Lisa sat down to eat, a small bowl of the stir-fry in front of her. She hesitated for a moment before taking the first bite. It was different, fresh, light, and not quite as comforting as her usual meals, but there was something satisfying about it. The tang of the avocado dressing gave it a creamy texture that mimicked some of her favorite dishes. And the quinoa added a hearty, filling feel to the dish that her typical salad didn't provide. For the first time, she didn't feel deprived. Her stomach settled, and for the first time in weeks, Lisa felt a little proud of herself. She had made it through one meal. And more than that, she had taken another small step toward a healthier version of herself. Her body wasn't used to the lighter meals yet, but the energy she felt afterward was something she hadn't experienced in a long time. A week passed, and Lisa found herself feeling more energetic than she had in years. The aches in her joints were still there, but they were less frequent. She was waking up earlier, and for the first time in a long while, she was looking forward to the day. She was no longer feeling the weight of fatigue hanging over her, nor was she constantly battling her cravings for foods she knew she shouldn't have. Her walks around the neighborhood had become more frequent, and with each passing day, she felt a little stronger. She had started to push herself, adding a few extra blocks to her walk, or picking up the pace for a few minutes. At first, her body had resisted, her knees creaked, her calves burned. But now, it felt like she was slowly regaining the strength she had lost. One afternoon, she decided to take things a step further. She went to the local community center and signed up for a light exercise class for seniors. It was a daunting decision. She had never thought of herself as the type of person to join group activities. After all, what if she wasn't able to keep up? What if she embarrassed herself in front of others? But her growing confidence pushed her forward. It's time, she thought. Time to make the change. Time to push past the fear and embrace something new. The first class was a challenge. Her legs trembled during some of the squats, and she had to catch her breath a few times during the cardio intervals. But when the class ended, Lisa felt an unexpected sense of pride. She had done it. She had shown up, and she had given it her best. And for the first time in years, she felt alive, like she was taking control of her future. The changes in Lisa's lifestyle didn't come without their struggles. The food choices were still a challenge. Sometimes, she'd find herself standing in front of the refrigerator, debating whether to make the healthy choice or go for the easy comfort food she had relied on for years. There were days when the urge to eat her old favorites was overwhelming. But each time, she reminded herself of the progress she had made. The aches in her joints had lessened, and the weight she had gained in the past few years was starting to drop off. It wasn't easy. Every meal, every decision, was a small battle. But she was beginning to realize that it wasn't just about food or exercise, it was about mindset. She had spent so many years letting grief and loss control her, allowing herself to live in the shadow of the past. Now, she was slowly but surely breaking free. The morning she woke up and noticed a significant change in her appearance was a turning point. Lisa stood in front of the mirror, her hand brushing over her hips. The clothes that had felt tight a few weeks ago now fit more comfortably. She smiled to herself. The scale might not have moved much, but the changes were undeniable. Her body was adapting. She was beginning to feel like herself again, and the physical changes were just the outward signs of a much deeper transformation. David had been her biggest cheerleader throughout the process, but Lisa was beginning to believe in herself as well. She wasn't doing this for him, or anyone else. She was doing it for herself, for her own health, for her own happiness, for the future she still had ahead of her. One afternoon, Lisa sat down at her kitchen table, a cup of tea in her hands. The weight of the journey was heavy, but it wasn't overwhelming anymore. She was learning how to pace herself, how to accept the days when things didn't go perfectly, and how to push forward when she felt like giving up. Her mind drifted to the past few months. She had faced obstacles, made mistakes, and felt frustrated at times. But through it all, she had stayed committed. She had made progress, and while it wasn't always linear, it was real. And in the process, she had rediscovered a part of herself she thought she had lost forever. The truth was, this journey wasn't just about food or exercise. It was about reclaiming control over her life. It was about deciding that she deserved more than just existing. She wanted to live, to thrive, and she was learning that thriving meant taking care of herself, body and soul. As Lisa sipped her tea, she felt a calm certainty wash over her. This wasn't just the beginning of a diet plan, it was the beginning of a new chapter in her life. One filled with more energy, more joy, and more possibilities than she had ever imagined. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, Lisa felt ready to face whatever came next. The road ahead was uncertain, but the lessons she had learned so far would guide her every step of the way. What if this was only the beginning of something even greater? What if embracing change, and taking care of herself, could lead Lisa to an even brighter future than she had ever dreamed? Lisa didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, she was eager to find out. The days had turned into weeks, and Lisa's journey through her new lifestyle had not been easy. The emotional weight of her decisions often felt as heavy as the physical changes she was undergoing. Some mornings, it felt like the bed itself was holding her down, urging her to stay in the comfort of the familiar, the routine that had served her for so long. The old foods, the old habits, they were like old friends who always knew how to make her feel good in the moment, even if that feeling never lasted. But Lisa was learning that true change wasn't about quick fixes or instant gratification. It was about doing the hard work, day in and day out. She wasn't just altering her diet, she was reshaping her entire life, inside and out. And every day, she was met with both triumphs and setbacks. One particularly hard day, after a class at the community center, Lisa found herself sitting in the car, staring blankly at the steering wheel. She had barely managed to keep up with the exercises, and when the class was over, she'd overheard some of the other participants chatting about how they'd been exercising for years. They had lost weight, gained muscle, and felt stronger. Lisa felt defeated. She wasn't there yet. She was still struggling. Tears welled up in her eyes, and for a brief moment, she allowed herself to break down. It was as if the weight of all the changes, the sacrifices, and the doubts she'd been carrying finally came crashing down. She hadn't expected it to be easy. But she also hadn't anticipated how much it would hurt. What was the point, she wondered. All this effort, was it really worth it? Was it even making a difference? And deep down, she feared that maybe she was too old to make these changes. Maybe her body had already reached a point of no return. She wiped her eyes and started the car, not knowing where she was going. But the drive ended up taking her to a park by the lake, a place she hadn't visited in years. It used to be her favorite spot for walks and reflection when she was younger. As she got out of the car and began walking toward the water, she felt the crisp breeze against her face, and it soothed her. The lake was calm, and the reflection of the trees in the water seemed to mirror her own inner turmoil. Lisa sat on a bench overlooking the water and closed her eyes. The cool air was refreshing, and for a moment, she allowed herself to simply be still. As the silence surrounded her, she felt a small voice in the back of her mind. "You're not alone in this." For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of clarity. She didn't need to be perfect. She didn't need to compare herself to anyone else. The journey she was on was hers and hers alone. It wasn't about fitting into someone else's mold or measuring up to their progress. It was about making the changes that were right for her, in her own time. That evening, when Lisa returned home, she felt lighter. The weight of her doubts hadn't disappeared completely, but something had shifted. She was still going to face difficult days, moments of frustration, and perhaps even moments of doubt. But she wasn't going to give up on herself, not now, not after everything she had been through. The next day, Lisa took the time to sit with David. He had been so supportive, constantly reminding her of her worth and the progress she was making, even when it felt like it wasn't enough. Today, she felt ready to share something with him. "David," she began, her voice shaky but determined. "I think I've been putting too much pressure on myself. I've been trying to force everything to happen so quickly. But I realized something today. I don't need to be perfect. I just need to keep moving forward, even if it's a slow pace." David smiled, his eyes filled with pride. "You're exactly right, Mom. You don't need to be perfect. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. It's about showing up for yourself every day, even when it's hard." Lisa nodded, tears welling up in her eyes again. But this time, they were tears of relief. She had been holding on to a weight that wasn't hers to carry. Perfection wasn't the goal. Healing, growth, and taking one small step at a time, those were the true measures of success. "I've been so hard on myself," Lisa confessed. "I've been focused on all the things I haven't accomplished yet. But I've missed seeing how far I've come. I've made changes. I've stuck with this diet. I'm feeling stronger. And I'm not going to stop now." David's smile widened. "That's the spirit, Mom. Keep going. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. I'm here. We're in this together." From that moment on, Lisa approached her journey with a renewed sense of perspective. She still had her struggles, of course. Some days were harder than others, and the temptation to revert to her old habits was always lurking. But something inside her had shifted. She no longer viewed each small step as insignificant. Instead, she recognized that every positive change, no matter how small, was a victory. Lisa began to look at herself in a new light. She wasn't just a woman trying to lose weight or eat healthier. She was a woman who had faced challenges, who had walked through pain and doubt, and who was learning to reclaim her life. The emotional turmoil she had experienced was just a part of the process, not the end of the road, but a chapter in a much larger story. As the weeks passed, Lisa began to see real changes. She felt more energetic, her clothes fit more comfortably, and the pain in her joints started to lessen. She was walking faster, holding her head higher, and smiling more often. But the most significant change of all was the shift in her mindset. She no longer saw herself as a victim of her circumstances. She saw herself as a woman capable of change, a woman strong enough to keep moving forward despite the obstacles. One evening, as she prepared her dinner, a roasted sweet potato, grilled chicken, and a side of steamed broccoli, Lisa couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. This wasn't just a meal. It was a representation of her progress. It was a symbol of the healthier life she had created for herself. Her phone buzzed with a message from David. "How's your evening going, Mom?" Lisa smiled as she typed her reply. "It's going great, David. I'm proud of how far I've come. And I'm excited for what's next." As she sat down to eat, she realized that the emotional lows were just as important as the highs. They had shaped her, taught her, and reminded her that strength didn't come from avoiding challenges, it came from facing them head-on and continuing to push forward, even when the road felt uncertain. What if the breakthroughs Lisa had experienced weren't just about her health, but about reclaiming the joy in her life? What if, in learning to care for her body, she had rediscovered a deeper sense of purpose, a new outlook on her future that was filled with hope and possibility? Lisa didn't have all the answers, but she knew this: the journey was far from over. The lessons she had learned would guide her every step of the way. And as she moved forward, she wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The morning sun spilled through the window, casting a gentle warmth over Lisa's kitchen. It had become a space of transformation, both literal and emotional. The countertops, once cluttered with convenience foods and snacks, now held bowls of fresh vegetables, whole grains, and lean proteins. As she prepared her breakfast, scrambled eggs with spinach, a side of avocado, and a few slices of whole grain toast, Lisa reflected on how much had changed in her life. Her body felt lighter, but more than that, her heart felt lighter. She wasn't carrying the same burdens of guilt, self-doubt, or fear she had been before. The journey she had embarked on months ago wasn't just about weight loss or eating healthier. It was about learning to live fully again. It was about rediscovering a sense of worth and taking control of her life, one small choice at a time. Today was different. There was no looming feeling of anxiety about the next meal, the next workout, or the next challenge. Instead, Lisa felt at peace with herself. She was no longer consumed by the pressure of perfection or the constant need to compare herself to others. What she had learned through this journey was that growth wasn't about perfection, it was about progress. Every day was an opportunity to do better, even if it was just a little bit. Lisa sat down to her breakfast, savoring every bite. The eggs, the creamy avocado, the crisp toast, it was all delicious, but more importantly, it was nourishing her body in a way that it hadn't been nourished in years. She could feel the difference. Her energy levels were higher, her thoughts clearer, and for the first time in a long time, she wasn't overwhelmed by cravings or fatigue. David had noticed the change in her too. Over the past few weeks, he had seen how committed she was to her health. He had seen how Lisa no longer viewed her meals as a source of comfort but as a source of fuel for her body. She had begun to embrace the idea that food wasn't something to be feared or controlled, it was something to be respected. She had learned that eating well wasn't about restriction, it was about balance. One afternoon, Lisa found herself sitting across from David at a coffee shop. They had been talking about her progress, how she felt, the changes she had noticed, and what still needed improvement. David had been her biggest cheerleader throughout this process, but today, Lisa wanted to take the time to thank him. "David," Lisa started, her voice soft but full of sincerity, "I just want to say thank you. I don't know if I could have done this without you. Your support has meant everything to me. It's not just the advice, but your belief in me. You've made me believe in myself again." David reached across the table and took her hand in his. "Mom, I've always believed in you. You just had to believe in yourself. And you've done that. You've shown incredible strength. I'm so proud of you." Tears welled up in Lisa's eyes, but this time, they weren't tears of frustration or doubt. These were tears of gratitude. She had struggled for so long, carrying the weight of loss, pain, and self-criticism. But now, she felt free of that burden. She had finally learned to trust herself, to believe in her own ability to change. As the days turned into months, Lisa's transformation continued. She had become more active, walking daily, practicing light yoga, and even trying out new recipes that incorporated more vegetables and whole grains. Her health had improved significantly, her cholesterol was lower, her blood pressure more stable, and the pain in her joints had lessened dramatically. She had lost weight, but it was the internal changes that mattered most to her. She began to look at the world through a different lens. Where she had once seen obstacles, she now saw opportunities for growth. She had embraced a mindset of resilience. Life wasn't about waiting for the perfect moment, it was about making the most of each moment and taking action, even when things didn't go as planned. One evening, as she was preparing dinner, roasted salmon with a side of sautéed spinach and quinoa, she realized something important. She had stopped thinking of this journey as a diet or a temporary fix. It was now simply her way of life. She had found a rhythm that worked for her, and it felt sustainable. The old habits that once controlled her didn't have the same power over her anymore. She had broken free from the cycle of emotional eating, self-doubt, and shame. As she sat down to enjoy her dinner, Lisa took a deep breath and reflected on her journey. She had come a long way, but she knew the road ahead would still have its challenges. There would be days when the temptation to fall back into old patterns would be strong. There would be moments when she questioned whether she could keep going. But now, she felt equipped to handle those moments. She had learned how to show up for herself, even when it was difficult. And most importantly, she had learned to be kind to herself along the way. As Lisa moved forward, she began to see her transformation as part of a larger journey, not just about physical health, but about emotional and mental well-being. She had rediscovered her sense of self-worth, and that had made all the difference. The changes she had made to her diet and exercise routine were only one piece of the puzzle. The true transformation had taken place within her, and it was a transformation that would continue for the rest of her life. Her story was no longer just about losing weight or feeling better, it was about reclaiming her life. It was about deciding that, despite everything she had been through, she deserved happiness, health, and peace. And in that moment, as she sat down to a healthy, nourishing meal, Lisa realized that she was living proof that it was never too late to start again. What if, by making small, consistent changes every day, you could rewrite your own story? What if, like Lisa, you could reclaim your health, your happiness, and your future, no matter where you start? Lisa's journey was a testament to the power of resilience, self-love, and the belief that a new beginning could happen at any moment. The most important lesson she had learned was that the journey never truly ends, it simply evolves. And as she looked toward the future, she knew that whatever came next, she was ready for it. As Lisa continued on her path of self-improvement, one thing became increasingly clear: no one truly succeeds alone. Yes, personal growth was an internal journey, but the support of others could make all the difference. For months, Lisa had been making strides on her own. She had her moments of breakthrough, her days of struggle, but there was something that she had failed to acknowledge until recently: the power of her community. It wasn't just about the physical changes she had made, it was about the emotional support that surrounded her, whether from her family, friends, or even strangers who shared her story. Over the past few months, Lisa had taken part in a fitness class at the community center and had connected with a group of women who were also striving for better health and wellness. At first, it had been hard for her to open up to them. She wasn't ready to show her vulnerability. But little by little, she began to form connections. It wasn't until one day in particular that Lisa realized just how essential this support system had become. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and Lisa had just wrapped up a particularly grueling workout. She felt the familiar soreness in her muscles, but there was a deeper fatigue in her bones. For a moment, it felt overwhelming, the endless cycle of effort, progress, setbacks, and hope. Her body was telling her to rest, to take it easy, and her mind was echoing the same sentiment. Sitting on the edge of the gym mat, she noticed one of her classmates, Karen, walking over. Karen was in her early 60s, and Lisa admired her strength. Despite her age, Karen had shown remarkable progress since she started attending the classes a few months back. She always seemed to be the one pushing others, encouraging them to keep going, even when they felt like giving up. "Hey, Lisa," Karen said, sitting beside her with a warm smile. "You okay?" Lisa sighed, feeling the weight of her fatigue. "Honestly, Karen, I don't know. I'm tired, physically and mentally. It's like, no matter how hard I try, I can't catch a break. Some days, it feels like I'm running in circles." Karen nodded sympathetically. "I get that. Believe me, I do. There were days I thought I'd never see the progress I wanted. But you know what I learned? It's okay to feel tired. It's okay to need a break. The important part is that you don't quit. Lisa looked at her, confused. But how do you keep going? How do you not give up? Karen smiled gently. Because I'm not doing this alone. I have you guys here. I have my family. I have my friends. We all support each other. And you have that too, Lisa. Don't forget it. When you feel like giving up, lean on the people who care about you. We're all in this together. Lisa's heart swelled with a mixture of gratitude and realization. She had been so focused on her individual journey that she had forgotten the importance of leaning on others for support. She had been so used to doing things on her own that she hadn't fully embraced the idea of community, the idea that asking for help wasn't a sign of weakness but of strength. That afternoon, Lisa made a mental promise to herself: she would stop carrying the burden alone. She would reach out to her support network more often, allowing them to help her when the weight of her journey became too much. The next few days were a bit different. Lisa started opening up more to the women in her fitness class. She shared her struggles, her doubts, and the moments when she felt like giving up. In return, the women shared their own stories, stories of triumphs, failures, setbacks, and comebacks. They celebrated each other's victories, no matter how small, and offered each other encouragement on the tough days. But Lisa's support system didn't stop there. Her son David remained a constant source of strength. He had always been there for her, whether it was offering a listening ear or making her laugh when she felt like crying. He had been there every step of the way, cheering her on, reminding her of her progress, and helping her navigate the challenging days. One evening, after a particularly difficult week, Lisa called David. She had hit a wall and felt the weight of everything pressing down on her once again. But instead of pushing through on her own, she reached out. "David, I need to talk to you," Lisa said, her voice tinged with frustration. "I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, but I still feel like I'm stuck." David was quiet for a moment, and then, as always, he offered the kind of wisdom that only a close family member could. "Mom, progress isn't always visible right away. I know it feels like you're stuck, but you've come so far. Do you remember when you first started this? When you couldn't even walk for 10 minutes without feeling out of breath? Look at you now. You're walking longer, working out harder, and you're healthier than you've been in years. It's not about being perfect every day. It's about consistency. Keep showing up for yourself, even when it's tough." Lisa let his words sink in, and for the first time that week, she took a deep breath and let go of some of the pressure she had been placing on herself. She was doing the best she could, and that was enough. The next morning, Lisa walked into her fitness class with a new mindset. She greeted the women with a smile, knowing that they were all on this journey together. She didn't have to do it alone. She didn't have to be perfect. What mattered was the effort she was putting in and the support she had from the people around her. Throughout the class, Lisa noticed a shift within herself. She felt lighter, not because her body had changed dramatically, but because her heart had. She wasn't carrying the same weight of isolation, fear, and self-doubt anymore. She was surrounded by a community that understood her struggles, celebrated her successes, and most importantly, accepted her for who she was, no matter where she was on her journey. As the class came to an end, Karen approached her once again, this time with a small nod of approval. "See? You're doing it. You're showing up, even on the hard days." Lisa smiled, feeling the warmth of her progress. "Thanks, Karen. I think I'm finally starting to get it." Lisa's journey had been full of ups and downs, but one thing was clear: the power of a strong support system had made all the difference. It was the people in her life who helped her keep going, even when it felt like she couldn't. And as she continued on her path to healthier living, she knew that no matter how tough the road got, she wasn't walking it alone. What if the missing piece in your own journey wasn't just about changing habits or trying harder, but about leaning into the support and love of the people around you? What if, like Lisa, you found strength in numbers, and together, you could face the challenges that seemed impossible alone. Lisa had discovered the truth: community was not just a luxury, it was a necessity. And with her community by her side, she was ready for whatever the future held. It had been several weeks since Lisa had made the decision to embrace her community and trust in the process. Her physical and emotional health had improved in ways she hadn't expected, but as with any journey, there were still challenges to face. For Lisa, one of those challenges came unexpectedly, a sudden setback that tested her resolve. It all began on a Wednesday, one of those rare days when everything seemed to be going well. She had completed her morning workout, enjoyed a nutritious breakfast, and was feeling more energized than ever. The progress she had made felt like it was finally adding up, and Lisa felt that, perhaps, she had finally found a rhythm. That afternoon, however, things took a sharp turn. While running errands, Lisa felt an uncomfortable tightness in her lower back. She chalked it up to overexertion from the morning workout and pushed through it. But as the hours passed, the discomfort grew. By evening, the pain had escalated to a point where walking was difficult. The thought of going to bed, lying down, and not being able to get comfortable kept her awake most of the night. The next morning, Lisa could hardly get out of bed. Every movement felt strained, and a wave of panic washed over her. This was not just a mild setback, this felt serious. After all the progress she had made, the idea of being sidelined by an injury filled her with dread. Was this the end of her journey? Was this the breaking point that would undo everything she had worked so hard for? With her son David's encouragement, Lisa made an appointment with a physical therapist, hoping to find out what was wrong. The waiting room of the clinic was filled with the quiet hum of soft conversations and the occasional rustle of medical papers. Lisa couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt, as if this setback was a personal failure. When she finally saw the therapist, the diagnosis wasn't what she expected. After a series of gentle tests, the therapist explained that Lisa had overstrained a muscle in her lower back. The good news was that it wasn't a permanent injury, but it would require time to heal. The bad news was that it meant she had to take a break from her usual routine of working out. No lifting weights, no intense cardio, and definitely no high-impact exercise for the next few weeks. Lisa left the clinic feeling defeated. She had been on such a positive trajectory, and now, it felt like all of that was at risk. How could she continue her health journey if she couldn't work out? Would this injury set her back even further? The questions swirled in her mind, overwhelming her with doubt. That evening, Lisa called David, explaining what the therapist had told her. Her voice was tinged with frustration, and she felt embarrassed to admit her fears aloud. "I can't believe this is happening. I was finally starting to see results. Now I feel like I'm going to lose everything," she said, her voice cracking. David's response was calm but firm. "Mom, setbacks are part of the process. Everyone has them, and it doesn't mean you're starting over from scratch. You've already made incredible progress. This is just a temporary roadblock. You're strong, and you'll get through this. Are you sure?" Lisa asked, her uncertainty clear in her voice. David chuckled softly. "You've been through much tougher stuff. This is nothing you can't handle." That night, Lisa lay in bed, contemplating his words. She had faced many challenges in her life, some far more difficult than this. She thought about her past, the times when she had felt truly broken, unsure if she could move forward. Each time, she had found a way to rise again. Why should this be any different? The next few days were tough, but Lisa decided that she wasn't going to let this injury derail her completely. She still had the power to make healthy choices, even if they didn't involve intense physical activity. She could focus on her nutrition, her mental health, and the small daily habits that had helped her get this far. So, instead of feeling sorry for herself, Lisa took action in a different way. She started researching gentle exercises that would support her recovery, like stretching and yoga, which would help her stay active without straining her injured back. She also made a conscious effort to stick to her healthy eating habits, preparing nutrient-rich meals that would support her body's healing process. But most importantly, Lisa decided to lean into the support system she had built. She reached out to Karen from her fitness class, who had dealt with her own physical setbacks. "Karen, I'm struggling here. I can't do the things I've been doing, and I feel like I'm failing." Karen's voice was reassuring. "Oh, Lisa, you're not failing. You're being smart. Rest is just as important as working out. Focus on what you can do right now, and don't let the frustration take away from all the progress you've made." The conversations with her friends and family were a constant reminder that this setback wasn't the end. It was just a part of the process. It wasn't the first challenge she had faced, and it wouldn't be the last. The real question was how she would respond to it. Would she let this injury defeat her, or would she find new ways to keep moving forward? Lisa spent the next few weeks focused on healing. Slowly, she integrated light stretching and walking into her routine. She listened to her body, not pushing beyond her limits, and gradually, the pain in her back began to subside. Each day brought small victories, like being able to walk longer without pain, or waking up without feeling stiff. It wasn't the intense workouts she had been used to, but it was progress. As Lisa's back healed, she realized something important: setbacks weren't just challenges to overcome, they were opportunities to learn and grow. She had been so focused on pushing herself to do more, to be better, to achieve more, that she had neglected the importance of balance. This injury had forced her to slow down, to recognize that there was strength in rest, in listening to her body, and in adapting her approach when necessary. Her recovery didn't just involve her body, it involved her mindset. She had learned that being healthy wasn't about doing everything perfectly, it was about being flexible, resilient, and patient. It was about continuing to show up for herself, no matter the obstacles. A few weeks later, when Lisa finally returned to her fitness class, she felt a deep sense of pride. She wasn't where she had hoped to be, but she was moving forward. She had learned that the path to health and happiness wasn't always a straight line. There would be bumps, detours, and setbacks along the way. But with the right mindset, the right support system, and the resilience to keep going, there was no obstacle too big to overcome. Lisa smiled as she joined her classmates for a warm-up, feeling more prepared than ever to continue her journey. What if the obstacles you face, instead of setting you back, were actually giving you the opportunity to strengthen your foundation? What if, like Lisa, you could turn a setback into a powerful lesson in resilience? The next chapter of Lisa's story wasn't about avoiding challenges, it was about embracing them. After all, it wasn't the easy moments that shaped her growth, it was the tough ones. As Lisa continued her recovery from the injury, she began to realize that her journey wasn't just about the physical changes she had made or the setbacks she had overcome. It was about something deeper, something that had been brewing quietly in the background all along. Her path to healthier living was not just a pursuit of fitness, it was a search for purpose. It was a discovery of who she truly was, and what she was capable of, both mentally and emotionally. The healing process had given Lisa space to reflect on her life. In the quiet moments when she wasn't rushing from one activity to the next, she started to ask herself bigger questions. Why was this journey so important to me? What am I really trying to achieve? One evening, after a gentle yoga session that left her feeling calm and centered, Lisa sat on the floor of her living room, stretching her legs out in front of her. Her mind was quiet, and for the first time in weeks, she felt completely at peace with where she was in her journey. The frustration and guilt she had once carried had faded, replaced by a sense of clarity. As she looked around her home, she realized that everything she had been doing, whether it was working out, eating healthy, or focusing on her mental well-being, was about much more than just physical appearance or fitness. It was about cultivating a life she felt proud of, a life filled with balance, purpose, and self-love. The number on the scale, the weight she lifted, or how fast she ran no longer mattered as much as it once did. What truly mattered was how she felt inside. And for the first time in a long time, she felt good. Really good. Her thoughts turned to her family, especially David. She had always worked hard to provide for him, to give him everything he needed, but she had often neglected herself in the process. Now, as her health and happiness improved, she realized that in taking care of herself, she was also setting a better example for David. She was teaching him the value of self-care, of perseverance, and of not being afraid to invest in her own well-being. But it wasn't just about her relationship with David. Lisa's relationship with herself had changed, too. She had spent much of her life trying to live up to the expectations of others, chasing goals that weren't hers, and worrying about how she was perceived. Now, as she sat there in her quiet space, she understood that the most important relationship she could cultivate was the one she had with herself. The next day, Lisa had a conversation with Karen after their fitness class. Karen had become a close friend, someone who had been through her own share of challenges and was always ready with a word of wisdom. They had both been on this journey together, albeit with different experiences, and Lisa had come to respect Karen's perspective. "Karen, I think I'm finally starting to get it," Lisa said, catching her breath after a cool-down stretch. "I've been so focused on the physical side of things, but now I see that it's about more than that. It's about having a purpose, living a life that feels fulfilling. It's about creating balance and happiness." Karen smiled knowingly, wiping the sweat from her brow. "Exactly. So many people think health is just about working out and eating right, but it's about so much more. It's about mental and emotional well-being, too. If you don't have that peace of mind, all the workouts in the world won't do much for you. You've got to find what makes you feel truly alive, and then, everything else will fall into place." Lisa nodded thoughtfully. "I've been chasing this idea of perfection for so long, trying to hit every goal, every number. I think I forgot that it's not about perfection, it's about progress and self-acceptance. And honestly, I'm finally starting to feel that." "You're not alone in that, Lisa," Karen replied. "I was the same way when I started. I thought I had to do it all, be perfect, never miss a workout, always eat the right foods. But life isn't like that. The key is finding joy in the process, not just focusing on the destination. When you enjoy the journey, the results will follow." Lisa felt a warmth in her chest as Karen spoke. She realized that this was the lesson she had been searching for all along. It wasn't about the perfect body or reaching some unrealistic goal. It was about finding happiness in the present moment, embracing the ups and downs, and understanding that her worth wasn't tied to any number or external standard. Later that week, Lisa found herself sitting at her kitchen table, sipping a cup of herbal tea as she reflected on everything she had learned. It had been months since she started her health journey, and the changes in her life were undeniable. She had become stronger physically, yes, but more importantly, she had become more compassionate toward herself. She had stopped measuring her worth by the scale or by how many calories she burned. She now recognized that health was a holistic journey, one that included the body, mind, and spirit. Lisa realized that this newfound clarity wasn't just about physical health, it was about life itself. She had learned that the path to wellness wasn't linear, and that's okay. There would be challenges, there would be setbacks, and there would be moments of doubt. But with the right mindset, she could handle whatever came her way. She also realized that her story wasn't just hers alone, it was a story that could inspire others. She could share her journey with others, not to brag about her success, but to show them that it was possible to change, to evolve, and to become the person they were meant to be. She wanted to empower others to take control of their health, just as she had, and to know that they didn't have to be perfect to make progress. The next time Lisa met with her fitness group, she felt different. She felt lighter, not because her physical appearance had drastically changed, but because she had finally understood that the true goal was not just about achieving a certain image, it was about creating a fulfilling, balanced life. She was no longer afraid of the obstacles that would come her way, because she knew she had the strength to face them. Lisa shared her thoughts with the group, opening up about how her perspective had shifted. She told them about the importance of embracing the journey, finding peace with where they were, and celebrating the small victories along the way. Sometimes we get so caught up in where we want to be, we forget to appreciate where we are right now, Lisa said, looking around at the women who had supported her throughout this process. We're all on this path together, and each step is progress, no matter how small. It's not about being perfect. It's about being real with ourselves and loving ourselves along the way. That day, Lisa realized that she had found something even more valuable than physical health. She had found a sense of peace, a sense of purpose. It wasn't about what the world expected of her. It wasn't about external validation. It was about living authentically, loving herself, and embracing the journey of life with all its imperfections. And in that moment, Lisa felt truly alive. What if, like Lisa, you stopped chasing the unattainable and started embracing the beauty of your own journey? What if, instead of focusing solely on the destination, you found peace in the process and joy in every step? Lisa's story had proven that true transformation was about more than just changing the body, it was about nurturing the mind and soul along the way. And as she continued her journey, she knew that the best was yet to come. Lisa's newfound clarity wasn't just a personal revelation. It became the foundation of her growing desire to inspire others. As her physical, emotional, and mental health continued to improve, she realized that her journey had the potential to impact the people around her in ways she never imagined. What if her story could empower others to make healthier choices, to prioritize self-care, and to embrace their own path toward well-being? She began to see herself not just as a participant in her own life, but as a guide, a mentor, and a source of encouragement for others. It wasn't about having all the answers, it was about showing people that change was possible and that they didn't have to be perfect to take the first step. It was about helping others recognize their own worth and strength, just as she had come to recognize hers. The first opportunity to share her story came one Saturday morning during her weekly meeting with Karen and their fitness group. Lisa had noticed that some of the women in the group were still struggling, feeling frustrated by the slow progress or weighed down by their own doubts. Karen, ever the supportive friend, suggested that Lisa share more of her personal journey. "Lisa, I think it would help them to hear about what you've been through. You've made such amazing strides, and I think your story could really inspire them," Karen said after their workout, her voice full of encouragement. Lisa hesitated for a moment. She wasn't used to being the one to give advice or share her experiences with others, but then she thought about how much it had meant to her when Karen had done the same. Maybe this was her chance to pass it forward. With a deep breath, Lisa stood in front of the group. As she looked around at the familiar faces of the women who had supported her along the way, she felt a surge of gratitude. These were women who understood her struggles, her triumphs, and her journey. And now, she had the opportunity to share how it had changed her life. "Hi, everyone," Lisa began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I know we've all been working really hard, but I want to talk about something that I've been reflecting on recently. It's not just about the workouts, the numbers, or even the food choices we make. It's about the bigger picture, the way we think about ourselves and our lives. I've spent so much time in the past focused on what I wasn't doing right, and trying to be perfect, but that's not the key to lasting change." Lisa took a moment to collect her thoughts before continuing. "I realized that the real change for me happened when I shifted my focus. It wasn't just about looking better on the outside. It was about feeling better on the inside. It was about learning to love myself, even on the days when I didn't feel my best. And I want to encourage all of you to do the same. It's okay to have setbacks. It's okay not to be perfect. What matters is that we keep moving forward, no matter how small the steps are." She saw nods of understanding from the women in the group, and a few of them smiled warmly at her. Lisa continued, "If there's one thing I've learned, it's that change doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't look the same for everyone. But what we can all do is focus on progress, not perfection. Celebrate every small victory, and never forget that we are worthy of taking care of ourselves." The room was silent for a moment, and then one of the women, Tanya, spoke up. "Lisa, that really resonates with me. I've been so hard on myself because I haven't seen the results I wanted yet. But hearing you say that makes me realize I need to focus more on how I'm feeling, not just the scale or the numbers." Another woman, Olivia, added, "I think I've been stuck in the same place. I've been avoiding certain foods because I'm so focused on being perfect. But maybe I need to just take it one day at a time." Lisa felt a sense of pride as she watched the group connect over her words. She wasn't just speaking to them, she was engaging in a conversation that mattered. She was helping them shift their mindset, just as she had done for herself. Over the next few weeks, Lisa's message of self-compassion and progress began to spread beyond her fitness group. Karen encouraged her to share her journey with a broader audience, on social media, in health forums, and even in local wellness events. Lisa initially hesitated. She wasn't used to putting herself out there like that. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized how powerful her story could be. If she could inspire even one person to start taking care of themselves, physically, emotionally, and mentally, it would all be worth it. So, with a mix of excitement and nervousness, Lisa created an Instagram account dedicated to her health journey. She started posting pictures of her workouts, her meals, and her reflections on the progress she had made. But what set her account apart from others was her openness about the challenges she faced, her struggles with self-doubt, her injury, and the difficult moments along the way. One of her first posts read, "Health is more than just how you look. It's about how you feel. It's about treating your body with love and respect, and knowing that every step forward, no matter how small, is a victory. Today, I'm choosing to focus on progress, not perfection. I hope you will too." The response was overwhelming. Women from all over began commenting on her posts, thanking her for her honesty and for showing them that they didn't have to be perfect to start their own journey. Lisa's message was resonating with so many people, and she felt a sense of fulfillment that she had never experienced before. One evening, Lisa received a direct message from a woman named Susan, who had been following her journey on Instagram. Susan shared how she had been struggling with her weight and self-esteem for years but had found the courage to start making healthier choices after reading Lisa's posts. "I just wanted to thank you," Susan wrote. "Your story inspired me to stop waiting for the perfect time to start. I've begun walking every morning, and I'm focusing on eating better. It's not perfect, but I feel better already." Lisa smiled as she read the message. It wasn't just about the numbers on a scale or the inches lost. It was about the emotional and mental shifts that were happening, shifts that could change the course of someone's life. In the weeks that followed, Lisa continued to share her journey, and the impact was undeniable. She received countless messages of gratitude and stories from people who had found the courage to take their own first steps toward health and happiness. Each message reminded her of why she had started this journey in the first place, not just to change herself, but to help others do the same. Lisa had learned that her journey wasn't just about herself. It was about the ripple effect of inspiring others to take action, to believe in their own potential, and to embrace the beauty of progress over perfection. She had started with a desire to improve her own life, but now she understood that her story had the power to touch the lives of others in ways she had never imagined. As she reflected on the impact she had made, Lisa realized that this was just the beginning. She wasn't done yet. There was still more to learn, more to experience, and more people to inspire. And she couldn't wait to see where the journey would take her next. What if, like Lisa, you started sharing your story with others? What if your journey could inspire someone else to take the first step toward their own transformation? Lisa had discovered that sometimes the greatest impact you can have on the world is simply by showing up, being authentic, and sharing your journey with those around you. As Lisa's journey continued, she found herself reflecting on everything she had learned over the past months. She had come so far from the woman who was once overwhelmed by self-doubt and constantly chasing after unattainable standards. Now, she was someone who embraced her progress, both the triumphs and the struggles. But there was one thing she hadn't fully grasped until now, the power of patience. The idea of patience wasn't new to her, it was something she had heard about often. But, like many people, she had thought of it as something that applied to others, not to her. After all, Lisa had always been someone who wanted quick results. Whether it was with her health journey, her career, or her personal life, Lisa had always tried to rush things, thinking that faster was better. But as her healing process unfolded, she started to understand that true change couldn't be rushed. It needed time, effort, and most of all, patience. It was a rainy afternoon, and Lisa was sitting at her kitchen table, sipping her favorite herbal tea. The soft patter of rain against the windows was comforting, and for the first time in a while, she didn't feel the usual pressure to be constantly busy. She was alone, with her thoughts, reflecting on how far she had come. Her fitness journey had become a symbol of her overall transformation. Not just the physical changes, but the emotional and mental shifts that had taken place over time. She had learned to trust the process. She had accepted that there would be setbacks, there would be days when she felt like giving up, and there would be moments when progress seemed slow. But she had also learned to celebrate the little victories, the small steps that mattered more than the big leaps. Her body had changed. She was stronger, leaner, and more energized. But even more than that, she had developed a deeper sense of self-compassion. She had learned to speak to herself with kindness, rather than criticism. She had learned that it was okay to be imperfect. It was okay to make mistakes, and it was okay to take things one day at a time. Lisa smiled softly as she thought about the message she had received from Susan in the previous chapter. Susan had shared how she had been inspired to start her own health journey after reading Lisa's posts. Susan's words had reminded Lisa that the impact of her story had gone far beyond just herself. It had become a source of inspiration for others to start their own paths toward better health and well-being. That realization was powerful. Her story had sparked a ripple effect, and it had the potential to keep growing. But even though Lisa was proud of her progress, she knew that she wasn't done yet. Her journey was ongoing. There was still work to be done. She still had goals she wanted to achieve, both in her health and in her life. But for the first time, she was okay with that. She wasn't in a rush anymore. She was ready to let the process unfold at its own pace. The concept of patience hit Lisa most powerfully during a workout with Karen. They had decided to tackle a new routine that was more challenging than anything they had done before. At first, Lisa was excited. She felt strong, confident, and ready to push herself. But halfway through the workout, she felt a familiar wave of frustration. Her body was tired, her muscles were aching, and she wanted to stop. She could feel the temptation to give up, just as she had so many times in the past. Karen noticed the change in her demeanor and stopped her. "Hey, take a breath," Karen said gently. "Remember what we've talked about. It's not about pushing through every single rep, it's about patience and progress. You don't need to do everything perfectly today. Every time you show up, you're winning." Lisa took a deep breath and nodded. She slowed down, giving herself the time she needed. She remembered that her journey wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, doing her best, and trusting that the results would come in time. In that moment, Lisa understood something important. It wasn't just about the milestones and goals she had set. It was about the process itself. It was about enjoying the journey and embracing the ups and downs. The destination mattered, but the path was just as valuable. Over the next few weeks, Lisa's perspective on life continued to evolve. She began to approach all areas of her life with more patience. At work, she no longer felt the need to rush through tasks or constantly push for promotions and recognition. She found satisfaction in doing her best in the present moment, rather than obsessing over what came next. In her personal life, she nurtured her relationships without the pressure of expectations. She was finally able to be present, to enjoy the process of building a fulfilling life, and to let go of the need to control everything. One evening, after dinner with David, Lisa sat back and reflected on the changes in their relationship. She had been so focused on providing for him in the past, on being the perfect mom and role model, that she had neglected to truly connect with him in the way she wanted. But now, she was more present. She wasn't rushing through their time together, trying to make everything perfect. She was enjoying the little moments, like watching a movie together, having deep conversations, and laughing over a shared joke. David had noticed the difference, too. "Mom," he said one night as they were cleaning up after dinner, "I've noticed something. You seem different. You seem happy." Lisa smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "I am, David. I'm really happy. And I'm learning that it's okay to just take things one step at a time." In the final stages of her journey, Lisa had become someone who not only inspired others but also learned to appreciate herself in ways she never had before. She realized that her health was about much more than just her physical appearance or the number of workouts she completed. It was about loving herself through the process, trusting that everything she had worked for would come to fruition in its own time. Lisa had grown not just in body, but in mind and spirit. She had learned the importance of patience, both with herself and with life. She had learned to trust the process, to embrace every step of her journey, and to focus on progress, not perfection. As she looked toward the future, Lisa felt a profound sense of peace. The destination, whatever it might look like, was no longer the most important thing. The path was. And with that realization, Lisa knew she was ready for whatever came next, whether it was a new challenge, a new adventure, or simply more time spent in quiet reflection. Her journey was far from over, but she had already won the most important victory of all, the ability to appreciate every moment along the way. What if, like Lisa, you stopped rushing through life and embraced the beauty of patience? What if you focused not on the end result, but on the process itself? Lisa's story had come full circle, and she was ready for whatever came next, knowing that her best was yet to come. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?